Erskine was, of course, from Indiana. Gil Hodges was from Indiana. Although being a Cardinal fan, I followed those two guys in baseball. So that was a unique experience.
How about, because we're going to eventually talk today about the Indiana Baseball Hall of Fame. Did you know Frank Baird?
Yes.
Okay. And is Frank Baird one of the few people that are in all three of the Hall of Fames in Indiana? Or is that a trivia question that I need to dig deeper on?
Well, you might dig deeper, but there's not too many that have achieved, what he did.
It was funny how my wife gets aggravated at me. I'll go through the alphabet. If I know the name starts with like a C, I'll go through and start naming things that start with C to help me remind me. And it was funny how you got to with Jumping Johnny Wilson, you got Jack. So it's like, Jumping Jacks. Okay, Jumping Johnny Wilson. There we go. See, I'm not the only one that does it.
Well, at 78 and a half, your mind plays tricks on you, and you have to develop little gimmicks to help you out. And only someone who does that can recognize when someone's scrambling.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that because I did that. I can't tell you now what it was, but I used the letters A.J. Foyt, and those were the three major battles that were the turning point on Napoleon's career. And I can't remember what the A.J. and the F were for, but I remembered them as A.J. Foyt. But evidently it wasn't. It was good enough for back then, but it's not good enough for me to remember. Except that I used A.J. Foyt's initials to remember it for a history exam.
Yeah. I'll give you a first name for Mr. Noel Lofton was his name. Noel.
Noel, yes, because I think he was a very harsh, strong-willed father. John was kind of, you coached John, so, and poor guy, I don't know if you were at that football game where he just let it roll out into the field when he's, thinking that the game had expired.
Well, he was playing for Pat Malone then.
Okay.
I ended up, or Joyce and I ended up bringing Noel and his wife home from that game. I forget who he rolled up with, but he was a very emotional man, a nice guy, but a very emotional, and he was raising hell about Pat Malone was highly organized and so forth, and couldn't remember to teach his players not to do what John did. But you talk about a tough ride home. We had a Firebird, and there's not a whole lot of room in a Firebird. And I put Noel in the front seat with me and drove and listened to him. But I like Noel. He was a good guy, but he he just fought things. And before practice, he'd move around. It's a great day to be a Tiger, and going on. But he was a good guy, but he was better off not coaching football. Is how that worked.
What was that? The time ran out, and I think who were you got? Who was Princeton playing? By the way, were they playing
Washington?
Okay.
Washington.
Okay, and he tossed the ball to the official and fumble. No,
they hiked it back, and John just kept going back where we were near Washington's goal line, and John just kept dodging and bouncing back, and rolled into their end zone. The horn went off, and he dropped the ball. And the guy had sense enough to down it in the end zone, and we went from winners to losers. All in a heartbeat. So
that was
if John just dropped down and dropped on one knee, it would have been all right.
It's interesting that some of these guys I had when I graduated from Indiana State University, I started working at the Finish Line, which is an athletic shoe store, and I had Rob Kirchhoff worked for me, John Lofton worked for me, Scotty Hicks, who went on to Notre Dame, worked for me a little while in between professional basketball gigs, John Sherman Williams out of Washington High School. But it's interesting to see now, I was only 21, 22 years old myself, but it's interesting to see the maturity that some of those guys have done, because when John was working for me at the Finish Line, I said he's not going to make it back past his 23rd or 24th birthday, or someone's going to really hurt the kid. But he has really matured and turned it out really well, and same way with Rob.
Yeah, John ended up, one of my first cousins in Indianapolis worked for John. He's in actuary science, I think.
Right.
And several years ago, the guy who coached Legion ball dropped it and went to travel ball for 5 years. And then myself and another guy, we ran a fundraiser. We made over $22,000 to get back the Legion program. And John sent me a check for $500 and corresponded with him. So you're right. He turned out okay. Just a tough situation. I remember after we played Gibson Southern, I brought John back to the gym. I was the assistant coach for Marty Eichelberger. I took him down to our gym, got a step ladder, took him up and had him sit on the rim. And I talked to him. And I gave him 2 basketballs he put side by side, and they both fit right down through the rim as to, how big that rim is, to help him with his shooting and so forth. So it's a small world.
What is it like? What was it like? I think last time we kind of ended with you helping out Coach Eichelberger at Princeton. I mean, you didn't want to have you really just your love of baseball. You just wanted to stick with baseball, but you said you'd help Marty along. It's a real political process in Southern Indiana hiring a basketball coach, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
I'm unsure what you mean by it is a process of getting a basketball coach. You're right, but I really don't. It wasn't that I didn't like basketball. I was assistant 3 years, one under Jim Jones, and the 8th grade basketball coach resigned. So I saw an opportunity to still help the program and yet get out of, being an assistant, which took a lot more time. So, I stayed with the 8th grade for 7 or 8 years. And I really enjoyed coaching them. And like I said, I had some nice 8th grade ball clubs. But the process of hiring a coach, you just didn't grab anyone coming along. It's a big evaluation process. So, and we felt like it was prestige for someone to be the head basketball coach. So, I don't know that explains all there is that goes to hiring, but that's what I know.
Is it like the movie Hoosiers where, okay, someone has got the job. You guys have gone through the process. They've got the job. You're helping them out. And they're graded, or, man, I guess, they're graded on a game-by-game basis. And I guess you've got to kind of be able to either A, work through that, or B, turn off everybody's opinion and, work through a season.
Well, our fans, we were expecting to have a good varsity ball club because of what the JV kids that did the year before. They had won 20 games and lost 2, and that was without my best sophomore, a Dyson kid who played up with the varsity. So it wasn't like we were running dry. And then Marty came in, and we, as the season went on, we had to drop a couple of kids. And Marty, told me, he said, I'm pretty active down on the sideline and so forth. Well, the thing that hurt us was that's when the bench decor rule came in, and it really hurt Marty. And he said, I said, I will go up in the crowd. And I told him, I said, well, you better have a lead and so forth, or they'll throw your body out on the floor. But anyway, are we being recorded now?
Oh yeah. So you go ahead and start watching what you say.
Well, I didn't know, but Marty was active, and he loved the game, and he just, he fought the game, and it was a tough situation for him at Princeton a few of the years, but that's the way it is with any basketball coach. If you didn't fight it, you weren't worth your salt. So,
I'm just going to call the very active Coach Marty Eichelberger, very active. When I was at Broadapple, I like I said, I wasn't very good at any sport, so I got to take everything in, and I just remember looking down, and man, he would stamp on that floor like he was trying to kill something that he could not kill with the first couple stamps. And
you tell me about it.
Man, and then the face, I'm like, that's red.
Yes, I thought he was going to have a heart attack any time. But what you saw is what you got. Marty was honest as the day was long, and he held our kids accountable as far as going to class, behaving outside of the classroom. He held them accountable. So it's just, I have a lot of respect for Marty.
In both at Lagodi and Princeton, or wherever you've been, how many times was Marty tossing you had to take over the game like Shooter Flatch and Hoosiers, or Jack Butcher at Lagodi?
Well, Jack was a little deceptive. Whenever he was animated and walking the sidelines like he was out of control, and the crowd was booing him and so forth and so on. And time out, he was hitting on all cylinders. He was calm and quiet and dictating strategy. So, once in a while, you would talk or take over, but Jack never really totally lost it on the sideline. Marty, got pretty excited. Jim Jones got pretty excited at times. But the part of it was part show, I think. Well, I know, but, anyway, Jack was hitting on all cylinders many a time. So,
were there times when you would sit on the varsity bench and watch, just watch the season unfold of basketball and think, oh man, thank God I'm just in charge of baseball, or thank God I'm in charge of baseball?
No, not really. I liked basketball, but I loved baseball, and I I don't ever recall sitting there, you know, when our season starts and so forth. I was loyal to the guy that was the head coach, and so no, there wasn't times where I was happy that I was a baseball coach.
What was a pet peeve of Coach Nante's, be it in baseball or basketball? Kids showing up late, kids not trying. What were some of your pet peeves that you had for some of your players, and how did you nip that in the bud, or how did you how did you correct some of those to where that never really happened a lot?
Well, being on time, that was a given. Uh, Showing up naked, that is, without long underwear, sweatpants, sweatshirt, sock hat, gloves. Uh, I talked to them about it the first of the season, and there really wasn't a problem that anyone would show up that way. They knew better. And at Lagodi and at Princeton, uh, I don't know if you can say this word or not, mule turd theater. Get aggravated at that. A little bit of history to that. My brother and I, when we go out on my grandpa's farm, this was when we were in grade school, Grandpa had a couple mules in the barn lot. And for lack of better things to do, we'd get out there and throw those mule turds at each other. And we'd be ducking and, dodging them and so forth. And every once in a while you'd get a freshman, and if you got hit in the back with that, that wasn't too cool. But I coined the phrase, we'll say that we're batting, we hit a ground ball to short, and he overthrows first base. And you round the base and heading for second. Meanwhile, the first baseman's chasing the ball, and he throws it wild at second. So you slide, and then you take off for third. Outfielder comes charging in and throws it over third. Well, each incident like that is mule turd theater, throwing it just at random. We'd have scene one, scene two, and then we loved it whenever the other team was having a display of that. So that aggravated me a little bit, other than when the other team was doing it. So I don't know. We had a routine, and we, as I say, expected the kids to be on time. That meant 10 or 15 early. We started stretching at 3 o'clock or 3:15. That means that you're there, you got all the bases out, you're ready to start stretching. It wasn't a guy walking into the park at 3:15. And, that's just the way it was. So, but I had enough other things that would aggravate me. I could always find something if I needed to.
Well, how was, when you knew the whole team was like having a particular rough patch, or you knew that it was really just one particular player or two particular players that were aiding the problem? How did you kind of handle that? Did you always try to do it in a group? Did you try to coach more in a group, teaching experience rather than singling somebody out, either in basketball or in baseball?
I usually tried to talk to them as a group and use analogies and so forth. One, a kid or two I had to single out, to push them, bust them out of a zone or whatever they were in. I always remember one, but I can't tell you about it. So had him dig a hole, very, very all of his aggravation out beyond center field fence, then get down in the hole. And I think he was scared I was going to have him fill it up then, but it got him out of a doldrum that he was in. He became a very good player for me the following year, and I invited him to Legion Ball, and he even invited me to his wedding. So that was a win-win situation for us. You know, some situations didn't go over as well, but anyway, just it's just a routine. I mean, when you've been a coach a long time, I coached baseball 30 years, and I coached basketball 30 years, and you know, you got a routine. You've got this is the way things are going to be, and when they're not, you can politely eliminate somebody, or word will be out, and very few of the marginal kids will come out. It's you know, never really had a problem with discipline.
What was Coach Nonte like with officials and umpires? Were there some things that would aggravate you? Would you let things just roll off your back? Were you more particular about baseball, or what was he like with officiating?
Well, I got a few technical fouls. One I got from the Evansville Rights coach. He was a neat little guy, chugging up and down the floor, and he finally stopped and said, "Now that's enough." Turned, called a T on me, and later became good friends with him. You know, I felt like we ought to get same break that everyone else got. Got a T at Evansville Rights. When I was coaching at Lagodi, we played a holiday tournament down there. Played against Wilmer Whitmer, an outstanding basketball player for Lagodi. And I finally hollered at the referees to make sure they get in the team picture after the game, because they had as enough to do with this as the players. And one of them didn't appreciate that, so he called a T, which I don't blame him. With umpires, I don't know. You know, I remember one or two. We had a collision at Evansville Central at home plate, and you know, then the runner had to slide and so forth. But I only got maybe a couple, or got booted out of maybe one Legion game, and really one high school game was all that I pretty well, I think, left them alone. And you know, as the longer you coach, you develop a maturity, or you pick your battles. And the guys, you know, they're doing as good a job as what they can do. So most of those, I mean, the technicals
must be free.
It happened, you know, early in a career. So,
of course, besides your home fields of where you coached, and I think I guess this can be both about basketball and baseball. What were some of your favorite places to go besides your home court or home field? And what are some of the places where you're like, you know, I'm really not excited about going there, or they really don't take pride in what they got going on here, or I really enjoy coming here and I wish we could win more here. Is that I know it's a fully loaded question.
Yeah. Well, you know, going to Jasper to play was always a big deal, and we played at Jasper each year until we got our new ballpark at Lagodi in 76 or 77. Washington, had an old ballpark that had been down there for several years until they finally built a new ballpark there away from the high school. I didn't really mind going and playing someone if I thought we could beat them. We've played in the early years at a golf course that was somewhat level and not sloping too bad. Played Needmore at, this was when I was assistant, and I had to go along as the varsity coach. Jack had a meeting or something. But you started out in baseball just playing anywhere and everywhere. And then we got started the state championship in 67, and ballparks began to improve, and the game began to improve. And so there weren't too many places where you basically had to go to a bare field, have 50,000 rules. So, like I say, one or two of us improving their field caused so-and-so to improve their field, and they all gradually ended up having pretty nice baseball fields anymore.
What was a bus ride like to the games with Coach Nonte? And then so this is a 3 questions. So, and then what was the bus ride back, whether you won or whether you lost? Was there, was there concentration on the way, and did you just let the kids be the kids on the way back, or, were there times where you kind of like wanted to be like Bob Knight and not even let anybody on the bus and like walk back to school or to wherever?
Well, not really. Maybe 1 or 2 times that's that way. We rode, the kids sit and talk and wear sunglasses. They didn't run up and down the aisles. And coming back, we had routines with a bucket and a concrete where they had to roll wrist rolls. They had to roll them up, unroll them down. Each of the guys had to go through that, win or lose. And it was, normal talking. So it really wasn't that much difference, win or lose. I would talk to them at times coming back if we, had played lousy or so forth. But it wasn't, a raising Cane this time and happy the next time. It was pretty even keel. Of course, then they got regulations on the bus when you couldn't roll up. Players had to be seated, and coach had to be seated. So, that cut down on some of it. But I think I was pretty even keeled. But whenever felt like I needed to rip them a little bit, I would. But majority of the time it was pretty even keel.
How hard was it being a coach and having to cut somebody that you knew had passion for the game and just didn't have the the mechanics or wasn't a very, you understand what I'm saying here? How hard it was to cut a player or to that you knew had, all the energy that you needed as a good baseball or a basketball player, but, you just needed this other member that was going to make your team what you thought your team needed.
Well, we never tried to cut freshmen or sophomores if we had room on the JV team. The only freshmen that we would cut would be kids where it was a danger for them to be playing catch or may get hit with a ball in the batting cage in batting, or if they were interested in just dorking around, goofing off, we would talk to them. And then if, they didn't pay attention, then we would cut them. I tried to be, never cutting up players. And we'd tell them, you'd be eligible to come out next year. But by junior, senior year, they had pretty well eliminated themselves. And so you didn't have to cut. Some, if there was room on the varsity, I've had, several players, they would chase foul balls part of the game, or they would warm up the catcher or whatever. And there's room for kids like that on a team. So, and after you're at a place, a time, they know your personality and they know you're not going to put up with any crap. And so, you just start the program, and kids will pretty well take care of themselves.
Dorking around. You're welcome to Dorking Around on Mule Turd Theater. I am your host, Billy Powell.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
No. What's it like? You had your memories growing up and what your dad taught you. What's it like coaching your own kids? Did you take something different into it on how you were maybe taught or coached from your mom and dad? I mean, what's that like, or do you have to approach it differently, or what's that like?
Well, first of all, my parents didn't question a coach. I remember how happy I was when I was 10 or 11 that Dad, that I could throw the baseball, and that I could catch my dad's hardest pitch. Dad didn't have a whole lot of time to play baseball with us, but he'd play catch with us once in a while. And I remember how proud I was I could catch his best pitch. But as far as going and coaching, wasn't there. Coaching your son is a little bit different, but Terry's personality and so forth was good. And Terry was a good average baseball player and might have been a little stronger had it not hurt his knee and would have been able to catch. Probably only one or two times I kept he and another guy after practice. That's his junior year. And got a wound a pitching machine up, threw pop flies, hit ground balls to this other kid. I look back on that wasn't probably the smartest thing to do. So, but it's a little bit different. But Terry made it easy, made it easy to catch. He started part-time his junior year and started, majority of time his senior year. So he it was a good relationship, I felt.
Man, if I'm not mistaken, and I know this is 31 years or 32 years of memory, old memory, but Terry had huge hands, didn't
Yes, he did.
he? I remember that because I
Wrestling
remember he
coach
could palm the basketball.
try to encourage him to come out for wrestling. But yes, he had nice big hands. So
Isn't it weird? Isn't it weird the things you remember?
Yeah.
And for those listening who don't know from the first show, Terry, Coach Nonte's son, Terry, we were friends and roommates in college at Indiana State University with another person I should have got. Well, I actually went to his house, and that was Brad Bottoms, and who went to Wood Memorial down there in the huge city of I can't remember what the huge city of Mackey, Indiana.
Yeah. Yeah, Brad was a good friend of his. And, talking about coaches and so forth, I wanted to mention Kevin Biggs, who was an assistant, took my place. Kevin, became a student of the game and really did a great job the years he was at Lagodi. And Steve Fisher, our freshman coach in '75. And Steve resigned basketball in '78, got into officiating, and later left Lagodi and got into administration, being school superintendent of a couple schools. So I wanted to mention them. Kerry Prather, student manager in '73. Kerry is our only college basketball coach. He was a head coach at Franklin College for several years, and is now the president of Franklin College. And then, of course, John Olson, student manager that didn't come out his first year. We consolidated, and then came out his senior year and did a remarkable job. John was a school psychologist. So I wanted to mention those guys.
John's about the only one that I've ever had on the show. I just had to roll out a question, and then I had to shut him up at the end of an hour and do 3 straight shows.
I know. We had an outstanding girl play for Princeton named Jackie Young, who broke the leading scorers record. If you put boys and girls together, she now plays for Las Vegas. And I coached Jackie's mother my first or second year at Princeton. I had to help with the girls. The basketball coach resigned, and so I helped with the girls. Her mother played center for me. But Jackie is just an outstanding person from Princeton. So wanted to mention them.
And Jackie went on to play at Notre Dame. Am I correct, or am I thinking of someone else?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, she did. That was Jackie. She quiet, let Umgumbawe shoot the ball, and the other 2 or 3 shoot it. But when it come down to crunch times, oftentimes, other than Umgumbawe, hit that 2 long shots to win it. But Jackie passed her the basketball. But she's just a really nice person.
What was that like, by the way? I have some silly questions. Like I asked Tommy John why he wore his hat so weird. I mean, did he had a funny shaped head? He never wore it straight on and never was curved. So I know that was a weird question to ask him, but I wanted to know it. So this is a question I want to know. So that's why I'm going to ask it. And that is, a lot of times in the 2 conversations that we've had, you said, I've helped out with that when this person resigned or that person quit. Is that something like they like come to you because they knew that you would do it, like Mikey in the Life commercial, or is that something where you're like, well, is that something that you would put under your sleeve to pull that card out later if you needed something? I mean, how did that work?
Well, Tommy John did wear his hat crooked.
You see?
I refereed basketball games with him and Terre Haute my freshman or sophomore year, or might have been my junior, senior.
See, I'm not crazy.
And then I met him again whenever we were inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Now, what was your question?
So, they needed you to do this. They needed you to step in for that. Did you kind of well, yeah, I'll do it. But did you, did you do it for the love of the game and the love of coaching? Or did you always try to, better your baseball teams or better your equipment for baseball when you would do something like that?
No, not really. People resigning, and it just, that was just part of the deal and so forth. Jim Jones talked me into getting back in boys baseball. Jed Beatles took the South Spencer head basketball job, and I thought long and hard about that, And then when he said he wasn't going to go anywhere, well, okay, I'll try it. But then, wrong. He went to Terre Haute North. So, no, I mean, I just say I liked basketball, but I loved baseball. And there's not a whole lot of difference between a love and a like. But, no, I didn't have any ulterior motives.
This is going to be probably a little bit searching here, and what were some of your favorite teams that you wished that if we got this break here, that break there, that you could have gone farther? And what were a couple of your overachieving teams that you remember in your career?
Well, our 73 team at Lagodi, when we won the regional and then won the afternoon game of the semi-state, and we were playing Jeffersonville in the championship game and ended up getting beat 3-1. We scored what I thought was a tying run in the seventh inning. They had a umpire at home plate, umpire at first, one at second, one at third. And they hit a ground ball between first and second, and it ricocheted and bounced. And anyway, we ended up, umpire called the runner safe at home, which was a tying run, and then stepped out, didn't ask the first base umpire or the second base umpire, drummed our runner out, who was on first. And so that ball took a funny bounce, but Jasper edged their grass. And I felt like it hit the edge of that grass and bounced. But he didn't. He also called a state tournament. This was his last hurrah from 35 years of coaching or whatever. That game would have liked to had back, but then we won the regional again and got beat in the semi-state. So, but a coach, he can go on and on and on about games, and just it's best not to get me started. Because you always think of this or think of that. What if? And that's what makes it a great game, But after 30 years, most of the games all run together, especially when you get the age I am now.
Did you enjoy going to did you go to the baseball finals even after you had quit coaching? Did you enjoy going to Busch Stadium and the other places that they've had it?
Yes. For years I would follow the state tournament, and the same way with our meetings and so forth. I didn't go to all of them, but it's always nice. And I have a boards at Gil Hodges Field starting with 1967, 4x8 sheets where I put the score and who won the sectional that year, who won the regional, who won the semi-state, who won the state, the two teams. And so, yeah, I followed it. Yes.
I know my grandfather, when he would take me to Indianapolis Indians games beginning in 1974, we sat in box 23, and we did that all the way up until, 89 or 90 or 91, and I just loved that ballpark.
Oh yes, there's not a bad seat in it, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful ballpark. Yeah, I would agree.
What did it mean to be told that you were going to be in the baseball hall, the Indiana Baseball Hall of Fame, and do you work with the Baseball Hall of Fame, and how does that work compared to the Basketball Hall of Fame?
Well, yes, it was kind of emotional whenever I found out or I got the letter that I had been inducted. But and it's a nice ceremony. It's in conjunction with the clinic that they put on each year in January, and the banquet is that Friday evening, and you have a meal, a lot of people participating, and speakers for the individuals and so forth. It is baseball puts on a nice affair for our clinic and for those being inducted. I know that basketball puts on a super meal, a program. I've been to that two or three times, and that is first class also. I've been to the Hall of Fame building at Newcastle, and Jasper has their Hall of Fame in a building in conjunction with Vincennes University on campus. So both are just super affairs.
So tell me a little bit. I know everybody's been listening for the past two shows. And you may not even want to talk about it, but you've here lately you've had a stroke, you've had a heart attack, but it sounds like everything's going good. And tell us a little bit about that whole situation. I know we may have to do another show just on that, but maybe you can condense it for us.
Well, I had a stroke 6 years ago, and thanks to Joyce, she got me to hospital and so forth. And then in December, I had a heart attack, and she again carted me to a hospital here in Princeton and got me to surgery that night about 2:30 and put in a stent. And I'm so far plugging along. My voice and speech is not as emphatic as what it used to be. I didn't have any problems from the stroke, other than, but this goes with age, remembering the last name of people and so forth. So, like the doctor told me, I'm pretty good shape for someone my age. So, that's it in a little bit. Everybody has problems, and I'm lucky that I had a wife that recognized what was going on and took action. So that's it in a nutshell.
And how did you, everybody has their story, but how, what was the, quarantine and being in lockdown and I guess just recently you got to see some family members based upon, shots and the pandemic kind of slowing down a little bit. What was that like during the pandemic? And
Well, I think this year was the first year since I've been in third or fourth grade that I haven't been to at least one high school basketball game. Uh, that was tough. Princeton had a little more than a decent team fighting odds of either playing or not. Lamar Brown uh, did an outstanding job, and I would have liked to have watched Princeton play, but here you are, an old guy, and they're encouraging not to attend and so forth. But Princeton finished 12-5 and lost in a double overtime to Sullivan, and then at Lagodi, Ryan Haywood, who was our Princeton basketball coach, uh, Ryan finished 20-4. They lost in a sectional to Bar Reeve, and I didn't get to see any of their games. Now I watched a few on YouTube, but listened to all that I could. So uh, I miss the basketball games. So it's I hope that the pandemic is getting to a point where we're getting out and doing things, getting people back to work, and so forth.
Coach Nonte, can they still get the history of Lagodi High School boys basketball and the a history of the Princeton Community High School boys basketball? Can they still get those books?
No, Princeton, I don't have any. Lagodi, I may have two or three of them. Um, I it just with Patoka, I have two or three of Patoka books, but all the Mount Olympus and the Princeton, Lincoln, Hazleton, I've sold those, and that was a unique experience. Uh, Selling books, trying to get your initial bill, what you had to pay for them, and when you were showing a profit. But uh, they really weren't a problem in selling them. Now you laugh like you know what I'm talking about.
Well, that's your next book, How to Become a Millionaire by Writing Books, right?
Yes, millionaire. No, you're satisfied with the accomplishment. You would like to make a little bit of money, and a little bit of money may be $50, but it's you're always chasing the rainbow. But that's okay. I can handle to lose a little bit of money.
I know you've been so awesome with giving us your time with taking a couple hours to share your stories. But and I didn't even know that I was going to roll this. Sometimes I'll just jot stuff down as I'm talking to you guys. When Joe toe drink, any stories about Joe or anything you think of when I roll that name out?
Well, I can't tell. Joe is another one that I had listed. He was, at Bar Reeve whenever basically we were battling the hatchets through the years. But we were also battling Bar Reeve. And Joe is one of those unique individuals that probably has never met a stranger. In a basketball game, I'm here to tell you he's competitive. he can change that glad-handedness to competitiveness in a heartbeat. I think a lot of Joe. And but stories, uh, I'll pass on that.
I know. Coach Dave Warland wasn't down there in that area very long, but did he coach baseball for Washington Catholic also, or was it just basketball?
I'm unsure if he
Okay.
also coached baseball. And Orland, he was a tough cookie to beat also. And he changed the complexion of Washington Catholic basketball and got Catholic kids to stay in school and to go to Washington Catholic. And they were pretty dadgone competitive for about 10 years or so through there. You didn't ask about the nostalgia sectional we put on at Princeton. I don't know if you even know anything about
No, please.
nostalgia sectionals. But when I first came to Princeton, we remodeled the old ballpark. Finally, after 4 or 5 years, got it up to snuff and looking like it used to. But we organized Nostalgia Sectional in 1988 and made enough off it to pay off $16,000 on our lights. And then the second year we had it, we bought a $14,000 electric scoreboard to put in the outfield and replace the old wooden one that we had. And then the third year that we had it, we divided the money among the schools. But there was 11 basketball teams that in all communities, it's easy to find a guy who still likes basketball or may still play a little bit. And you just organize them. And we met with the various leaders of the communities and put on this nostalgia basketball game and really had a good time. Packed the gym for the at least the first 2 years. And I told my brother about it, who was the principal of Washington High School. And their athletic director, and Tony, came down and met with us. And they had it for two or 3 years and made some good money off of it also. I mailed how we organized it to Muncie Central was one place, and they had good results from it and so forth. So I wanted to get that in. And my brothers, I guess I didn't mention them. Tony ended up being superintendent and retired as a superintendent from Shoals School. Tom retired from being superintendent of the Vincennes schools. Bob did teach, but went into business, and he's got a cushy job. He sells cars in Tennessee once in a while. And Bernie, who played on our 70 team, is a retired chiropractor from Jasper, Indiana. And then my youngest brother, who is 20 years younger than I am, is still a chiropractor in Ferdinand. So that's the extent. My oldest sister passed away several years ago. She was the best looking girl in the family. So
six boys and one sister, right? 6 brothers and one sister,
yes,
right?
Yeah. And then my girls, Jill lives in Tennessee with Joe Baird, a former Jasper player, and Audrey lives in Fishers, Indiana. Kevin, and of course Terry lives in Newburgh.
So, Coach Nante, how close do players still text you, call you? What does Coach Nante do in retirement now? I mean, there's just I can just see you. There's just no way that you're sitting there relaxing. There's always something to do with kind of that nostalgic side, or documenting something, or you know.
Well, like I say, I'm still busy with Princeton and somewhat with Lagodi. I put up the basketball pictures for several years, but Lagodi remodeled the inside of the gym and slowly reducing pictures and taking some pictures down. I emailed Coach Haywood that he needed to get a basketball picture, eventually up whenever they start putting up the individual basketball pictures. And then, as I say, at Princeton, I have over, I would say, 700 pictures, because I put up the football picture each year and 2 basketballs, the boys and the girls. And then we're working on kids who qualify for our Wall of Fame that have made all conference at least 2 times, and so forth. So we're in the process now of getting pictures up in the gym. So I really don't have any downtime. I got an email from a Lagodi player that I hadn't heard from in a long time. And then when they see that you're being interviewed, then a lot of them make contact with me and so forth. And then I see Lagodi players whenever I go back up for a basketball game. It's just a good situation.
You guys down there in Southern Indiana have, I feel like I could show up to a family event after this is all done, and people will go, "Yeah, well, Billy's a cousin, so he's related. You can let him in." I feel like you guys have I've kind of squeezed my way into a family, and that Princeton, Lagodi, that Southern Indiana, and it's fun to learn, it's fun to share, and I'm glad that you took some time to get some of this down in audio, and I appreciate you, and appreciate you doing the programs.
Well, it's quite all right. As I say, kind of hauled out some stuff and tried to list some names, and I'm pretty proud of myself that I didn't have to say, well, what's his name? What's his name? What's his name? So anyway, it's I've enjoyed it. And like I told you, you've done a wonderful job of keeping track of all this stuff. And you could probably go to, or you're right, any family in Southern Indiana and mention your name. And then they trace somebody down that knew you. So you're a part of the family also.
Coach Nante, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I know everybody's going to be looking forward to part 2.
Well, thanks, Billy.